Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Karate Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Samasta Janakalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda Madhavam. All right. Let's read from verse 29 to 31. Prakriter gunasamudhaha sajjante gunakarmasu tana kritsnavido mandan kritsnavinna vichalayet mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajwaraha. Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto nusuyantaha muchyante tepi karmabihi. Okay. So now we're in this space or place in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, where Bhagavan Shri Krishna last week, he said, now those that there are two ways of looking at this, right? And one is for the one who identifies with their body, mind, and intellect. And the other who's a tattvavit. And the tattvavit knows that the gunas are just playing in the gunas. Means the body, mind, and intellect are interacting in their respective fields of play. And that the ego is, the Atman rather. The Atman has nothing to do with it. The self has nothing to do with it. There appears to be this ego, but this ego is really illusory. And so the knower of the self, or the tattvavit, understands that it's just a play. The body, mind, and intellect will do whatever it has to do in their field of play, but the self is ever untouched. So in verse 29, it says, now those who are not able to come to that understanding, they need not be shaken violently, because they're still walking on the path. They're still doing what they need to. So let them do that, but don't shake them violently. We can inspire them. We can share things with them, but everyone takes their own time and space to evolve. And there are sometimes also where people come out of the path. Sometimes there are people who studied Vedanta for so long, but after some time, they just get lost. they just get lost, or they just get jaded, or they feel like it's not working for them. So our method is never of force or never trying to pull them, but just be a living example of what this teaching can do. And slowly, in their own time, in their own space, they will come to it. So they will come to it at their own space and place. Then Lord Krishna in verse number 30 says, okay, let me summarize to you the heart of chapter 3, because so many things were said in chapter 3. So Arjuna must be wondering, okay, now what do I do again? So Lord Krishna says in verse 30, Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa, means offer all your actions unto me. And with what attitude? Adhyatma chetasa, that I am the instrument of God. I am the instrument of God. And nirashihi, without any hope, turn that hope into faith, that everything will be as it needs to be. It might not happen as how we want it to happen, but who are we to judge how things should happen and shouldn't happen? What we can see is only a minuscule part or portion of the picture. So we have no right to judge. Leave it up to God. And we saw that God will win anyway. Bhagwan's will win anyway. So the option is just to surrender at the beginning and save ourselves all of the trouble, or to surrender at the end and live with so much anxiety. So there's no option to surrender. We have to surrender. But the question is when to surrender. How much are we going to fight this? And nirmamaha, without the sense that anything is mine. Everything belongs to God. I belong to God. Everything belongs to God. And therefore, yudhyasva, engage in one's duty, vigatajwaraha, with any stress or strain or pressure. Our dharma or our duty is to be seen as a way to get to God. That's it. Every step, everything that we do is a way to reach God. And so there should be no stress or strain, but it should be a beautiful peaceful method of coming to God or walking to God. Everyone has their own way to walk to God. So everyone's own dharma is their way to walk to God. Then he says in verse number 31, he says, now those who practice this teaching of mine, those who have faith in it, those who do not see faults in it, they are freed from sins or freed from karmas, which means that they eventually come to the path of jnana yoga. So number one is those who practice it. So obviously those who practice it have faith in it and don't see any fault in it. So this person who practices it will definitely come to jnana yoga because their minds will be purified. But let's say someone's not practicing it. Someone just has faith or shraddha. They also will be purified because one who has faith will eventually start practicing. When we have faith in someone or something, we will follow. It is because of our lack of faith that we don't follow or we don't practice. But the moment we have full faith, we put forth effort and we follow. So even the person who has faith will be freed. But what if the person doesn't have faith? The person is just anasuya. Anasuya means the one who doesn't see fault in this teaching, who just is very open and accepting to this teaching, but maybe still has some doubts, still has some questions. Even that person will be purified because a person with an open mind will eventually inquire into this and develop faith because this teaching is so universal. It's not for a particular religion or race or gender, ethnicity. It's so universal. It's so logical. And if we really start to practice and apply it, we see that it makes complete sense. It meets that emotional heart and that intellectual logic. So these people will be freed. But then now Lord Krishna says, what if people don't follow this? Then what will happen? So now we are there in verse number 32. So let us read 3.32. Ye tve tadabhyasuyantaha
Ye tvadadapyasuyantaha
nanutishtanti me matam
nanutishtanti me matam
sarvajnana vimudhanstan
sarvajnana vimodhanstan
Vidhi nashtana chetasaha
Vidhi nashtana chetasaha
Ye tve tadabhyasuyantaha nanutishtanti me matam sarvajnana vimudhanstan vidhi nashtana chetasaha. So now Bhagavan Krishna is saying, what happens to those who don't follow this theory of karma yoga? Ye tu, those who etad, this teaching of karma yoga, abhyasuyantaha, who find fault in it, na anutishtanti, and who don't practice it. Me matam. What is this karma yoga? It's my teaching, Lord Krishna says. Sarva jnana vimudhan. They are deluded in all knowledge. Tan, and them, achetasaha. They are devoid of discrimination. And nashtan, they will be destroyed. So what does he say? Those who carp at my teaching and do not practice it, deluded in all knowledge and devoid of discrimination, know them to be doomed to destruction. What does he say here? He's saying those who are abhyasuyantaha, those who find fault in this. So we're at a time in this world where we're seeing a lot of intellectual inertia, wherein we see a post, a line, a tweet, an Instagram of, just one or two lines, and right away we believe it. We believe everything we read because we're in such an instant time and space, and we don't question. So there are many people who will just find fault. They'll find one or two words and they'll say, oh, this doesn't make sense. So there are people who will criticize, find fault without understanding the whole context or trying to even inquire about it. That's called asuyantah, those who are finding fault, because they're not looking at the overall picture. They're not trying to really inquire, dig deeper into it. So those who criticize it without really inquiring, without really understanding, and those who don't practice it, those who even know it, come to know it, those who learn about it, but still don't practice it, then those people also, they are destroyed. Sarva jnana vimudhan. They're deluded in all knowledge. Why? Because all the knowledge that they've gained in life is not offered to this knowledge of the self. So what happens is, because there's no practice, there is no ability to inquire, they lose that chance to come to jnana yoga. So they're just deluded in aparavidya, in this worldly knowledge. Their mind is just kept in this worldly knowledge, and they miss the chance to come seek something higher. And achetasaha, they're devoid of discrimination, because they don't come to understand what jnana yoga is, what knowledge of the self is. They live their lives indiscriminately. And so all of their actions, all of their thoughts are just for their selfish pursuit. What can I get out of it? What do I feel like doing? What's going to benefit me? What's going to give me the most pleasure? All their actions are based on selfish or self-centered thinking. This is called achetasa. There's no sense of what can serve the world, what can we give back to the world. And because one's mind becomes like this, incredibly selfish and self-centered, what happens is the ego starts floating up. There's such a strong notion of I. There's such a strong notion of I, and therefore nashtan. Nashtan means here, they have to come back again and again in this cycle of action. They have to come back again because the moment the ego is strengthened, is bloated, is growing, the moment the ego just expands, that means we have to keep coming back until that very ego is dissolved. So that's why nashtan. Nashtan doesn't mean that, oh, completely destroyed, but it really means that they have to go through all of this suffering. It means that a person has to go through so much suffering. The bigger the ego, the more suffering we have to go through. And this is what Bhagavan Krishna is saying. He's clearly saying, I'm giving you a foolproof method of diminishing the ego, of crushing the ego, dissolving the ego, and it's called Karma Yoga. And this Karma Yoga is universal. You don't have to be a specific religion to practice it. It's a universal teaching of how to serve the world while exhausting our own vasanas. It's a universal teaching. Take it and you will expand and you will grow. But if you don't take it, what happens is the ego will expand. And we will have to go through these cycles again and again and again. And these cycles only mean suffering. So this is what Bhagavan Krishna says. And Arjuna takes this to heart and he says, wow, this is a big, big thing. You know, if we do it, if we follow it, we eventually get freed from this cycle of karma. And if we don't follow it, we have to go through this cycle of karma again and again and again. So Arjuna is thinking, why wouldn't people follow this? Why wouldn't people take to the path of karma yoga? So with this question in mind, now Bhagavan Krishna tells Arjuna the next verse. So let's read now verse 33. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha
Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha
prakritirjnanavanapi
prakritirjnanavanapi
prakritim yanti bhutani
prakritim yanti bhutani
nigrahah kim karishyati.
nigraha kim karishyati
Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakritirjnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigrahah kim karishyati. So he says here, jnanavan api, even a person who has knowledge of what? Adharma and dharma. One who is quite wise in the worldly matters, even that person, swasyaha prakritehe, of his own prakriti or nature, sadrisham cheshtate, he acts according to his own nature. Prakritim yanti bhutani means all beings, bhutani, yanti, they follow prakriti, they follow their nature, they act according to their nature. Nigrahaha, kim karishyati, what will restraint do? So what he says here, even a wise man acts in accordance with his own nature. Beings will follow their own nature. So what can restraint do? So here Bhagavan Krishna gives us very beautiful advice. He says that, listen, in this world, everyone comes with their own prakriti. Prakriti here means nature, means swabhava. Swabhava, tendencies, innate tendencies, vasanas. All these words are similar. So everyone comes with their own sets of vasanas. And so people act according to that. One example Gurudev always gives is that when people go to a party, everyone goes to a party, right away you can see the Vasana groups. All the doctors will gather together in their own field. All the artists and musicians, they'll gather together. They'll try to figure out some entertainment, something to do. All the foodies will right away go straight to the buffet. They won't even look at anybody or say hi. They'll go straight to the buffet. And then all the business people, men and women, will sit down and see how much do you think this cost? How much do you think they spend for this party? How much do you think they spend for this wedding? They'll sit down and they'll just speak about that alone. And so everyone is pulled by their prakriti. And so each one of us has that. We have our own innate tendencies and innate nature. And this can be seen in every level. So as I said, one example is, all of the people going to a party are pulled into different elements or spaces. Even our gods and goddesses have their own prakriti. Brahmaji's prakriti is to create the world. Vishnu Bhagavan is to sustain, and Shivaji is to destroy the negative tendencies. Like that, Saraswati Devi is knowledge, to give knowledge. Lakshmi Devi is virtue, and Durga Devi is strength. So all of them have their prakriti, their predominant prakriti. If we look also at jnanis, those who are realized, some of them will be very introverted and just like to keep to themselves and like solitude. But some will be quite extroverted and like to speak and like to travel and like to go places. And both are fine. That's their prakriti. In a family, some might be very, very interested in arts, but some might be very interested in medicine and totally different pursuit. Sometimes parents might wonder why their children have such pursuits so different from them. And also at different stages of our lives, our prakriti changes. So at one point we could have been social animals going everywhere, but at a later stage in life we could be more quiet. So everyone is pulled by their prakriti. And in this verse, Jnanavan really doesn't mean knower of Brahman. Jnanavan here means the one who has worldly knowledge of what's dharma and adharma. And so Bhagavan Krishna is saying, people don't always listen because they're pulled by their prakriti. Sadrisham cheshtate. It's just their nature. And so that's why we can't really change anybody unless they're willing to change. So many times we try to change partners, we try to change children, we try to change parents, we try to change so many people in our lives, but we always fail because we can't. Everybody has their own prakriti. The only thing that will give us peace is just accept them for who they are. That's what they are. And there is a beauty to who they are and how they are, if we only are alive and available enough to see it. There is a beauty. So when Bhagavan Krishna says this, that people are just in this world following their nature, Arjuna begins to feel so puzzled. He says, then does that mean we have no control? Does that mean that people are just going to follow their nature and we have no control over what we do? Does that mean that there is no such thing or such purpose of self-effort? Does that mean there's no purpose of Shastra or scriptures? So Bhagavan Krishna, in anticipation of that, he now replies to Arjuna. So now we will see verse number 34. Indriyasyendriyasyarthe
इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे
रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ
रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ
तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत्
तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत्
तौ यस्य परिपन्थिनौ
तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ
इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ. So what does he say here? He says, indriyasya arthe means the senses of the senses in their objects. It repeats indriyasya twice because it means like every sense organ, arthe, in their sense object, vyavastitau, they are seated in that. Raga dvesha, and with attachment and aversion, or likes and dislikes. Tayoho, of these two, likes and dislikes, navashama gachet. One shouldn't come under the sway of these likes and dislikes. Tau hi asya paripantino. These are foes. These are enemies of this person. Attachment and aversion for the objects of the senses abide in the senses. Let none come under their sway, for they are his foes. So now, how is Bhagavan Krishna answering this question? This is what Bhagavan Krishna is saying. First, he says that our sense organs, each of them have a field of a sense object. For example, the eyes are for seeing form and color. Ears are for hearing sound. The nose is for smelling, for smell. The tongue is for the field of taste, etc. So each sense organ has its field of its sense object, and each has its unique field. Each has its unique field. Now, the eyes cannot perceive sound. It has to be the ears. And the ears cannot perceive taste. It has to be the tongue. So each one has their own unique field. And in that field also, there is the raga dvesha. There is the likes and dislikes. The minute we have certain thoughts, we always divide the world into likes and dislikes. This is the dual pull that we have, likes and dislikes. And so what we see automatically when we see something, there's something we like, there's something we don't like already in our seeing, like and dislike. In our hearing, there's some sounds we like, some we don't like. In our tasting, some foods we like, some we don't like. So in these senses, in their interactions with the sense objects, there's this pull of raga dvesha. And by the way, this raga dvesha, or likes and dislikes, are not, though they're expressing in the senses, they're not from the senses, they're from the mind. Because, food or a sound or a form in itself, it does not have the capacity to create a like and dislike. For example, this book is an inert object. It does not have the capacity to create a like or dislike. It's our mind's connection to it that creates the like and dislike. A certain type of phone, a phone is just an inert object. It's an inert object. But it's so funny how an inert object can drive our lives and create so much likes and dislikes. So there's nothing wrong with the objects. All the likes and dislikes are actually created in the mind. And so we come to have so many of them that the minute that we perceive objects, there's always what I like and what I dislike. And these likes and dislikes, they're based on the things that make me happy and sad. So if something usually makes me happy, I like that. Or I like that person, I like that experience, I like that thing. If something makes me sad, I don't like that. I don't like that person or thing or object. And invariably, something that we like can be something we dislike. A person that we really liked at one point in time because they gave us so much happiness, the minute they give us sadness, we don't like that person anymore. So these likes and these dislikes are a play in the mind, and they keep playing on us. And so what Bhagavan Krishna says here is that these dual pull, they have come. They have come because of our vasanas. They have come because of our innate tendencies. Our characters and personalities have formed into this, into certain things we like, certain things we don't like. This is how a personality is formed. That's why in those autograph books or things like that, they'll ask, what do you like to do? You know, in all of these websites, do you like nature? Do you like to travel? Do you like to read? So these personalities, these contours are formed out of them. And so Bhagavan Krishna says this happens. But tayorna vasham agachet, don't get under their sway. So don't get under their sway means what? It means this. Number one is that, yes, all of us have a nature, a certain tendency, right? And we've seen, some of us are more Brahmana, more Kshatriya in the way of our thinking, in the way of our mood. So first we'll take an example of Arjuna. Arjuna, his temperament, his mood, his mode is of a Kshatriya. That's his tendency. And so when we say don't come under the sway of likes and dislikes, means do your dharma and don't resort to what you feel like doing, right? If your dharma as a kshatriya is to defend, to fight for justice, to defend your country, to stand up for what's wrong, then that must be your dharma and that must be done. Don't come under the sway of, oh, I want to do this and I feel like doing it and I don't want to fight, so I'm not going to fight. No, when it comes to doing your dharma, do what's right and not what you like. Yes, it's okay to express all of our tendencies. If some of us have this tendency to seek, seek. If someone has a tendency to nurture, nurture. If someone has the tendency to sing and dance, do it, but do it in the realm of dharma. Don't come under the sway of likes and dislikes and say, okay, I would like to express in the field of medicine because that's my tendency, that's my love. But don't say that, but I feel like doing medicine this way and not that way, or I feel like practicing in, at this time and not this time. Come in dharma, not in raga dvesha. And that's the purpose of our shastras. The purpose of our shastras are to say, yes, we know you have these tendencies, but bring it in a dharmic way. Bring it out in a dharmic way. Because when they're expressed in a dharmic way, these likes and dislikes get exhausted. And that's what we need to do. We don't need to create more likes and dislikes and likes and dislikes. We need to exhaust these likes and dislikes. So whenever I am doing an action or performing an action, I have to ask myself a question, is this the ideal way to do it? Is this the ideal way to be? And if it is, then I am not coming under the sway of raga dvesha. But if when I'm performing an action, I ask myself, okay, how do I feel like doing this? Then again, I'm coming under the sway of raga dvesha. I lose sight of the vision. The vision is to have purity, to gain purity of mind, to be free from these pressures of likes and dislikes, so that my mind is made ready to seek and to know more. So tayoho navasham agachet. Don't come under this sway. Dharma is to be done for dharma's sake and not because I feel like doing something or I want to do something. Gurudev said so beautifully, freedom is not doing what you like to do, not doing what you feel like doing. Because when I do what I feel like doing, we don't realize it, but we become the victim of our sense organs. Whatever our sense organs wants to do, we do. Freedom is being able to master the mind and senses and to be able to do what is required to be done. So, tayoho navasham agachit. Don't come under their sway. Now, another way of looking at this, see, because of all of the tendencies in our minds, thoughts will come, right? They're based on our tendencies, and thoughts will come. Certain kinds of thoughts will come. Sometimes we will even wonder, why did this thought come? From where did it come and how did it come? It's because it's been nurtured for so long by so many tendencies. It's been repeated. So when the thought comes, it will just come. In that coming or that arrival of the thought, we have no freedom there. Because of our swabhava, certain thoughts will just come. But where is our freedom? Our freedom lies on whether or not to nourish that thought. So step one is freedom lies in whether or not to nourish that thought. If it's a thought which should not come, which is so distracting and so disruptive, then it should go. But if it's a thought that should be nourished, then one can choose to nourish it. One can choose to make it bloom and grow. We have that choice. So that effort is there. It is true, according to our nature, helplessly certain thoughts will come. That is true. But the choice is, do we nurture that thought or not? And remember, we become what we think. So in that very moment, we ourselves are giving power to those thoughts. And if we give a lot of power to those thoughts, then they will become very, very strong. And the next expression of thought will be speech. So there again, we have the control. Do I express this as speech or not? Because when the thought becomes quite powerful, you feel the need to say it. You cannot keep quiet. When there's a strong thought, it has to come out. If it's a weak thought, it can stay in. So the choice is, am I going to say it or am I not going to say it? And sometimes we can have control into this aspect. We can have control of our speech and say, okay, forget about it. And you know what some people will do? They'll write it. Maybe they won't express it in speech, they'll write it. Or they will say it in a prayer, or they'll sing it in a song. They'll find some ways or means to express it. Then, if it comes out in speech, then the third level is, will it come out in action or not? Will I act it out or not? And that choice is up to us. Will I actually pursue it or not pursue it? And so there we have control. There we have effort. And once we do it, we do it. So here, there's two sides of it. One side is that, yes, helplessly certain thoughts will come because of the force of our vasanas. But we have our self-effort in play as to entertain it or not, to speak or not, to act or not. And that is up to us. And that's also where we take recourse to Shastra. Which kinds of thoughts should be entertained? Which kinds of thoughts should not be entertained? So only those thoughts which help us evolve, only those thoughts which bring benefit and goodness to all, only those thoughts should be nurtured. Other thoughts are not required. Thoughts are like visitors, they're like house guests. The more you feed them, the more they'll stay. But if you starve them, then they'll go away. So that's our effort. And he says, Asya paripantino. This raga, dvesha, these likes and dislikes they're like robbers, they're like thieves, they're like foes. Because when we have so many likes and dislikes, it takes away all of our attention. We all know that when we're sitting, when we're doing japa, when we're meditating, why is it that we cannot go in? Why is it that we can't go to the source? Because our minds are pulled by what we like and what we dislike. So something or someone we like, that's going to hold our attention in meditation. It can be also something or someone that we dislike. That will hold our attention. So when these two are very strong, there is no question of being able to turn within. Our attention will always be held by that. And so that's why he says they're like these enemies. So the best thing to do is don't come under their sway. Do what's right, do the dharma in the ideal way. Don't think about what you like or what you dislike. And even those thoughts that come, don't think about what you like or dislike. Think about what's correct to entertain. What should I entertain? And this beautiful way of screening our thoughts is a great practice. If we're able to screen our thoughts, then everything becomes more and more beautiful. Because thoughts can be very powerful. In the beginning, a beautiful example was given. It's like a flame, a small flame in a big, big windy area, a small flame. Nothing can happen to that. But if it's entertained, if that flame spreads, a whole fire can come about. And in that fire, the wind cannot blow the fire away, but the wind will help spread the fire also. So when the thoughts become so incredibly powerful, the intellect cannot anymore sublimate it or suppress it. The intellect can't suppress it. The intellect, in fact, will help it bloom or rise. This is what happens in our mind. So now to explain this point a little further, Bhagavan Krishna says, not only are raga and dvesha like our foes, but they also color our vision. These strong likes and dislikes that we have, they color our vision, they color our knowledge, they color our thinking. And in what way do they color our thinking? He explains now in verse number 35. So let's read this. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha.
Paradharmat swanushtitat.
Paradharmat swanushtitat.
Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha.
Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha.
Paradharmo bhayavaha.
Paradharmo bhayavaha.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. Paradharmo bhayavaha. So what does he say here? He says, these raga dveshas can bring about such confusion in thinking that paradharmat swanushtitat means paradharma. Paradharma means the duty of another. Swanushtitat, that's well performed. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha means that our dharma, swadharma, our dharma, vigunaha, which is devoid of merit, devoid of any such merit, is greater than the duty of the other that's well performed. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha, that swadharma, death, nidhanam, death in one's own swadharma is shreyaha, is better. Paradharmaha bhayavaha, then the duty of another is bhayavaha, is fraught with fear. So Bhagavan Krishna says here, better is one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than the duty of another well discharged. Better is that in one's own duty, the duty of another is fraught with fear or is productive of positive danger. So how does this relate to the previous verse? How it relates is this. When someone comes under the sway of such raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes, what happens is we begin to think and feel that other duties, other people's duties are better than our duties. And we should perform other people's duties instead of our duties. And so in response to this, Bhagavan Krishna says, no, no, no. Better is one's own duty, swadharma, than even another's duty being well performed. Now, why is Bhagavan Krishna saying this? Because Arjuna is in this dilemma. His swadharma, as we know, is that of a warrior. This is his tendency. And here, it's very beautiful how Gurudev has defined, these swadharmas. They are essentially our vasanas, and I'll just read the footnote here in my book. The compelling deep urges in us, gathered in our past fields of action that now determine our present emotional profile, are the vasanas. And these vasanas, they form our swadharma. So he says, in its right import, swadharma means the type of vasanas that one discovers in one's own mind. And he also says here, Arjuna is born a prince, trained in the art of war, and has exhibited in his life his insatiable thirst for heroism and adventure. Naturally, his swadharma is that of a prince, and that can find fulfillment only in dangerous actions and endless exertions. So this is the contour of Arjuna. This is his swadharma, as we have seen, as we have read. But in Arjuna's mind, he wanted to perform paradharma, somebody else's dharma. What someone else's dharma? Arjuna wanted to run away from the battlefield. Arjuna wanted to sit quietly and meditate. And Lord Krishna says, look, even if you do someone else's dharma, swanushtita, even if it's really well done, that is still not good. It's best to stick to one's own dharma. And death in one's own dharma, in this context for Arjuna, death in one's own swadharma is much better than doing paradharma, because it's fraught with fear. Now, first I'll tell you why, and then we will look at some examples of swadharma and paradharma. Why is it better to stay in one's own swadharma? The reason is because karma yoga is all about exhausting these vasanas, exhausting these tendencies. So when I stay in the field of my swadharma, my own natural inclinations, natural tendencies, I'm able to exhaust that and I'm able to purify myself. But if I engage in paradharma, something that's completely not matching my ability, my tendency, my aptitude, what happens is I don't exhaust these vasanas, I gain new vasanas, I gain more vasanas. And thus it's bhayavaha, it's fraught with fear, because again, I have to exhaust those. So I'm not purifying myself. I am again going through so much. Now, simple examples are these. And Gurudev also gives these examples. Some people feel that they should try another path or try to do something else because of pressure. Sometimes because of pressure, because of fear, because of worry, sometimes also because of glamour. So first, let's take the example of pressure. This can be likened to a college student who's really an artist, let's say this college student is really an artist, really a painter, someone so creative, but being forced to go to the field of medicine, maybe because of parental pressure or pressure from the friends or some kind of pressure or pressure to make money, being in the field, forced to go to the field of medicine. Now what's going to happen? This person's going to be miserable in the classes of medicine, through the courses. This person's going to want to paint, to draw, to be creative, to be outside, but they're stuck in this field of medicine. So they're not able to express their artistic ability. They're suppressing it. And then they are generating new vasanas for medicine, which they don't even like. They have no interest in it. In one of the speeches of Jim Carrey, he talks about how this was a famous graduation piece. And he said that his father really loved comedy and wanted to be a comedian and everything, but he took another job. And so, but he failed at it. And so Jim Carrey said, I learned that you can fail at something you don't love. So you might as well fail at something that you love. Isn't it? So it was so beautiful. So sometimes out of pressure, people feel the need to take up something that's not matching their swadharma. And what will happen is they won't live a fulfilling life. They will just be there because they have to be there. There's no inner sense of fulfillment, inner satisfaction. Sometimes also people pursue other people's dharma because they feel it's glamorous. They feel it's more glamorous. So let's say somebody is an ordinary business owner, like ordinary business owner. All of a sudden they see a scholar, and the scholar gains great name, great fame. And so the business owner says, I also want great name and great fame, so let me try and be a scholar. That person's going to be so miserable because that's not their tendency. That's not their aptitude. They might get the name and fame, but they'll be miserable in it. So here, the most beautiful thing about the Bhagavad Gita is it says, stick to your swadharma. We don't need to follow anyone. We don't need to copy anyone. It says so nicely here, it is dangerous to suppress one's own personality, expression, and copy the activities of someone else, even if that person appears to be living a nobler and diviner life. Whatever our tendencies are, express that, but express it in the field of dharma, express it in a dharmic way, and not taken by our raga dveshas. Express that. That is much better than doing paradharma. It might look to be like, oh, someone is getting more fame, more name, somebody's being appreciated more because they're doing, something else. And I also want that appreciation, want that fame. Sometimes people do that. Or I also want that money. I also want that stability. But at the end of the day, they lose out on inner fulfillment. Swadharma, it is what brings Shreyaha. Shreyaha is that inner fulfillment. It's that inner fulfillment. It's that purity of the mind. It's that beauty in the person. And when we engage in our own Swadharma, what happens is we're able to benefit everybody because we enjoy what we do so much. And so when we enjoy what we do so much, everybody else enjoys and everyone else benefits. We know that when we watched a show, when the singer really enjoys his or herself, everybody enjoys that. So he says, stick to your swadharma. Don't go into anybody else's swadharma. Use people's lives as inspiration, but everybody should find their own path, make their own path, walk their own path, and customize it according to your sense a state of evolution. And that's what makes one truly beautiful, when they stick to their Swadharma. There's one more short anecdote that I'll share with you. It's a child story. It's a child story, but it's very deep. There was one girl by the name of Deepa, and she had a farm. She had a cow farm, and one day she got a new dog. She got a new puppy. She used to take care of the cows. She used to milk the cows and everything like that. And one day she got a new puppy. And so the puppy came with her to the field, and obviously cows were all looking at the puppy. And there was one cow, her name was Gomukhi, and she was very well loved by Deepa. Gomukhi was just looking at this puppy, and this puppy was just running, jumping, barking. And this puppy just went on Deepa's lap, and Deepa cuddled the puppy, hugged the puppy. And so this cow, Gomukhi, said, wow, what happened? This puppy seems really cool. This puppy can jump around. This puppy can wag its tail, jump on Deepa's lap. And so Gomukhi went near Deepa and wanted to jump on her lap. And Deepa said, oh no, what are you doing? And this cow felt that she also wanted to run and bark and jump on her lap. And Deepa immediately understood and looked at her and said, if you do all of this, who will give us milk? Your Swadharma is to be a cow, to give milk, to provide nourishment, and there's a beauty in that. But this puppy's Swadharma is to run around, bark, and jump, and there's a beauty in that. So when one tries to be something else, it disrupts the whole process. So be your own person. Be your own person. Now Arjuna, says, he gets the message, but he says, Bhagavan Krishna, I feel like there's something deeper than these likes and dislikes. Because you're saying, we are pulled by what we like and what we dislike. We are pulled by that. We are pulled into this field. But sometimes also I feel, Bhagavan Krishna, that even if I don't want to do something, even if I try to avoid doing something, I'm helplessly pulled. What is that force? And how do I deal with that? And so that we will see next week. So here Arjuna is going deeper and deeper into the question. So today I'll just summarize what the conversation was about. So we started with, Bhagavan Krishna saying that those who do not practice this karma yoga, they will go through more and more suffering because their ego will be enhanced, it will bloat, they will be more selfish and self-centered, and they'll have to go through lives and lives again of trying to dissolve this ego. So inevitably, one will suffer. Whenever one's ego bloats, the ego will suffer. It will suffer. And so, Arjuna says, but then if that's the case, why aren't people listening to your teaching? If when they listen to it, they'll get freed from karma. When they don't listen to it, they'll get bound in karma. Why don't people listen? And Sri Krishna says, because people are guided by their prakriti or by their nature. And so Arjuna says, does this mean that we're helplessly guided by our nature? Bhagavan Krishna says, no. You have self-effort, and your self-effort is not coming under the sway of your likes and dislikes. Keep them aside and follow your dharma. Stick to your dharma. And so he says that, okay, what else? Bhagavan Krishna says, those who are deluded by the raga dvesha, sometimes they feel that they should do other people's dharma instead of their dharma. And when they do that, they only add to their vasanas and don't exhaust it. Therefore, you stick to your swadharma. Perform your swadharma. And in this way, you will be able to exhaust your vasanas. Okay? So we'll say the closing prayer, and then I have a few announcements, and then we'll take questions. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay.